is it's not just the battery. I know there's the antenna problem and things like that. Because you mentioned that, I know, Aaron, in the chat room, something about the battery issue might be more widespread than we thought. I know you said you read it, but we're talking about the iPhone 4S. There's been some battery issues. They just released the iOS 5.0.1 update that's supposed to help fix the battery issue, which is the battery gets consumed a lot faster, and even with the 4S, the standby time is only 200 minutes, vice the 300, I think, which is on the iPhone 4, not the 4S. But I mean, what have you heard?
Well, here's the interesting thing about this handset, right? Now, a couple of weeks ago, when Brad and I were discussing the 4S on Techwebcast, right after the launch, actually, we were sort of bagging it out because at the time there was such disappointment. Everyone's sort of expecting more. But one of the details that flew under the radar with that was that right from day one, we all knew that the battery life of the 4S was going to be 200 hours of standby instead of 300 hours of standby with the iPhone 4. So I think that this is a detail that a lot of people haven't really been paying much attention to, but the battery is a bit intentionally intentionally not holding as well as the previous phones. So I think that when they're now characterizing it as a battery issue and Apple are categorizing it as a battery fix, I think that what they've actually done is that they've attempted to try and implement a few changes in the operating system on features that don't suck so much battery life, so that they can claim that the performance of the operating system on the 4S is better. But what we're sort of seeing now is that even with this update, when you compare the 4S to the 4, the battery performance still isn't as good. But what people don't realize is that it's actually supposed to be that way. So it's basically one of the trade-offs that Apple have made with the 4S in terms of getting these extra bits on the inside. They've made the battery a bit smaller. So most people aren't talking about that aspect of it, but that's the way it is with this phone.
There was a comment, and this is a guy that I've known for a while. His name's Mr. Bit10 from YouTube, and he does he's the developer, and he does a lot of stuff related to Apple and Flash and Adobe and stuff. And he kind of brought up a good point, is that a lot of people are expecting with each new phone there's more features, it's more powerful, but yet they expect the same or more battery life. And usually Apple's been very good on battery life. Even with the newer phones that are supposedly coming out with Apple, they're supposed to be thinner, but how are they going to fit the same size battery, or are they going to improve it enough where all these new features and thinness is going to affect the battery life? So
yeah, and I guess the hardest thing is that guys like us, we can only at the end of the day, we can only speculate on what's going on, because Apple are pretty closed about what's going on the inside of their phones. But I mean, the first bad assumption that most people make is that when they hold an iPhone 4 and a 4S side by side, they look identical, so they assume that they still are identical. Yeah. When in actual fact, on the inside, they're totally different, completely different.
Oh, wow.
Especially with the antenna. The antenna design is completely different. And it's actually a lot more like Verizon's iPhone 4 than the original iPhone 4 in that respect. And as for the battery itself, I'm saying that they've probably shrunk it a bit, but we don't know for sure. What we do know for sure is that there's a different CPU. There's a bit, I think it's the same RAM. It's still 512 RAM. But that CPU could very well be a big cause of it. Bit of a battery guzzler. the A5 was introduced with the iPad 2, and so it had the benefit of running on that device with the bigger battery, and the performance seems to be just as good as the iPad 1 on that device. But yeah, it's definitely there's definitely less battery charge in the iPhone 4S, and we always knew that from day one. So I think that what we're going to find moving forward is that Apple will probably release a couple of more minor updates, because every single millisecond of time that they can save in battery consumption, they'll introduce that change, and they'll try as much as they can to try and bump up that 200-hour standby time. But I think for the most part, 4S users are going to have to get used to the fact that this device just does not have as much battery charge as the iPhone 4.
I think they also, I've heard of the survey out, the most requested features of a phone, and I think ease of use was one that was mentioned. Battery life was also mentioned. I forgot what the third one was. So obviously, to me, that'd be one of the most important aspects is battery life. Is going to last enough, at least till you get home from work before you can, really recharge it or something. But
of course, yeah. I mean, look, one of the things about the iPhone that people don't talk about much anymore, one of the big reasons why people were put off of it in the early days is that, people with Blackberries and stuff who just basically talk all day, they would have to change the battery because they wouldn't have enough charge until the working day was finished. And so with the iPhone, they introduced this system where you can't pull the battery out and change it. And that's why a lot of people were put off of it at first. But by the time the 3GS and the 4 came out, I think that people were, people who work were sort of finding that the phone definitely was holding enough charge that they could use it as a business device, make their phone calls all day, replace their Blackberries with this phone, and confidently go about their day on a single charge. And so now with the 4S, now that people have become used to being iPhone users, they've upgraded to the 4S, when in actual fact they've somewhat downgraded in this performance battery-wise. And because you can't replace the battery, they're now back to the original problem with the original iPhone and the iPhone 3G, that they can't hold a charge the whole day, and so that's frustrating for them. I totally sympathise with that.
Yeah.
And the reality is there isn't going to be a solution for that at all.
There's another news article that I read that was kind of interesting. I tried to find it again, and I wish I bookmarked it, but it kind of said to the effect of that it kind of compared like a MacBook Air battery with a laptop from 10 years ago. It said if the laptop from 10 years ago would use the same battery as a MacBook Air, it would only last like 2.5 seconds. Or something to that effect. So that kind of tells you how tweaked out this hardware is for battery life nowadays. They're making it smaller. They're trying to optimize everything. Of course, I do know, especially with Apple, that now they really went into, I believe, battery technology. They're trying to make the batteries last longer. Not just longer, but between even getting replaced, because now before it used to be 300 recharges, you had to buy a brand new battery. Nowadays they'll last 1,000 recharges, so that's why I think they had a tendency of making it more permanent, where you wouldn't really have to replace the battery, because I think the average they said was between the 1,000 recharges before you need a new battery, the computer would actually last on average 5 years, which a lot of people, they don't normally keep, especially cell phones, they don't keep it for 5 years. A lot with laptops and other computers. Yeah, we got Brad in there?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess he's still...
I'm sorry?
Oh, I just wonder if Brad was still with us, or...
Yeah, I'm here, mate.
Okay. I know we're kind of leaving you out of the conversation, but what do you think all about this?
I'm all talked out.
Oh, you're all talked out.
What were you going to ask me about the iPhone? Or?
Oh, yeah, just, talking about the battery life and about the 4S.
Well, me personally, I've had no problem with it. I did the update the other day, since that's been working fine. I took it off a charger last night before I went to bed, and woke up. It was still on like 80 7%.
Okay,
And I'm
so
still having like notifications running in the background and stuff, that sort of thing.
okay. Let me ask
So-
Aaron what type of
Hey,
phone
that-
does he has? You have?
I've got iPhone 4.
Okay.
iPhones.
And I've also got a HTC Desire HD, an Android phone. I carry
Okay.
two.
Android. So how does the battery life on the Android? Yeah.
It's terrible.
Oh.
HTC's biggest downfall is battery life in general. All of their phones are pretty average.
Yeah, that's what I heard on most people. I know I talked to Ronnie Rucker. He has an Android phone now, and some issues with battery life. I don't know. It seems like now and iPhone's catching up a little bit, but maybe it's due to.
I have to say that since me having the iPhone 4S, the Telstra 3G Next G has been really fast for me because there's 2 antennas in it now, so it's been really good. Download and upload, it's been pretty good.
I actually want to talk about the the antenna issue as well. I think maybe to me now this is just my own personal opinion. I think maybe the antenna issue was kind of blown out of proportion a bit because I mean I have an iPhone 4, just a regular one. It has I think it has the same issue, but I've never noticed. I mean I use it normally every day. I don't think where my hand is. I just use it and it works. So I don't know about everybody else, but since it was so blown
Do you have
out
a
of
case on your
proportion.
phone?
Well, yeah, that's true. I do.
Yeah. That'd be why. Look, the antenna issue on the 4, it was a legit issue. I got my iPhone 4 in about late July of last year, so it sort of there wasn't at launch for me, but that was the first thing I tried. I cupped my phone, and it definitely happens. It
Well,
definitely
yeah,
happens.
yeah.
And I think that Apple, looking back, the boneheaded decision that they made was that these little lines on the side that are the aerial, 2 of them are down the bottom, and then there's only 1 on top. So basically, when your hand covers those 2 lines down the bottom, you're wiping out 2/3 of your reception. So that's one of the first things that they fixed when they released the CDMA iPhone 4 on Verizon. That they introduced the 2 lines at the top, and that involved moving the volume buttons down slightly. So that meant that a lot of iPhone 4 cases didn't fit that phone as a result. But as soon as they did that, the phone was fine. I mean, at the end of the day, if you were cupping your phone, like you're squeezing the bottom of it, and you wiped out half your reception, you could still get by with half your reception quite well,
Yeah, I tell you the truth, I forgot about the case issue. You put the case on it, then you wouldn't have to worry. I guess it's the metal contact with your hand, I guess, that wipes it out. Or something like that.
The conducting. I mean, at the time, when the antenna gate controversy happened, Apple had to make a decision. If they did a recall, they would have to put this coating. I don't know what they refer to it as, but there's this type of clear coating that you could put over the metal, so that your hands wouldn't act as a conductor, and you wouldn't be able to actually cover the area because your skin wouldn't be making direct contact with it. And Apple just needed to decide whether they wanted to spend that money and spend that money on their customers, and they just decided not to because the bumpers, they cost like $1 to make, and they sell them for $30.
Yeah.
And so it just wound up being cheaper to spend $1 per customer on just giving away the bumpers, and that was good enough. So they got them out of it. And then, of course, with the CDMA iPhone 4 and the 4S, they fixed that problem with the coating. Actually, I should correct myself. I don't think that they did it with the CDMA iPhone 4. I'm not totally sure, but I think that with the 4S they've done that now, and it's a non-issue.
Well, another thing that Mr. Bit 10 did, he made a video. Actually, he did a demonstration video. He did it with the iPhone 4, and I think it was 2 other phones that weren't iPhones. I don't know if it was an Android or BlackBerry or something. And so he did a comparison. Now, I forgot all the result. I'll have to relook over it again. But even the other phones had kind of the same issue, if depending on how you hold it, because he'd show the reception bars and all that. and he had a similar result. I think on the 2 other phones. I don't know. I have to go through the YouTube videos again, but I know it's up on the site. I'll have to look at that again just to see. Yeah, it does. It does seem
look,
slightly.
yeah, that whole thing that Apple did back then, it was really, really lame. Really lame. You know, I mean, the thing is that with most smartphones, right, yeah, the aerial's built into the phone. I mean, this is standard with all phones, right?
Yeah.
With a lot of smartphone designs, it's common for them to put the aerial down the bottom. I don't understand why phone manufacturers do that. I'm not an engineer. And so, obviously, if you really sort of cover up the bottom of the phone with your hands, like squeeze it, you know, really get your hands around it, then the reception is having to go through your hand in order to work. And so, to a certain degree, sure, there's a bunch of phones that you could do that and make it more difficult for the phone to get reception. But Apple did that to basically convince the 80% of people that, okay, most smartphones are like that, fair enough, it's not just an iPhone thing. The other 20% who have brains knew that the particular problem was Apple's design decision to use the metal bands around the phone, and the metal, when making contact with the skin, had that conduction effect, and that caused a significant negative effect against the antenna reception. So sure the smartphones all have aerial problems issue. It was valid to some extent, but definitely the particular issue that they were trying to explain at the time was unique to that phone. And yeah, look, they came up with a creative way to try and deflect the issue, but we know as computer guys that that particular issue was all Apple.